Is there a bigger punch in the nose in all of life than to lose a child? And is there anyone who doesn't know someone who has? Losing a child can, especially if you don't work the grief out, well, it's a life-altering experience, regardless of how successful you may be in staying emotionally on top of this grief. Some people do it better than others. Bill Ermentinger is here. He's National Vice President of Compassionate Friends. You lost a 7-year-old daughter in 1967. She died of an overdose of prescribed but mislabeled medication.
That's right.
How did you get over the anger at the pharmacist?
Well, with a lot of difficulty, I guess. The thing of it is, the first thing I wanted to do was go throw a brick through his window. Mm-hmm. And
this happened in 1967. You were honest. How long did it take you to work? You were Mr. Macho, I'm the man, I will lead, I don't cry, I will handle this. Is that right?
Well, I think I was typical American man, yeah, that I was pretty quiet about it all. You go back to work, you try to do the job. And when I went back to work, that's pretty much what was expected, because nobody talked to me about it other than the first day. I thought you didn't talk. And the Compassionate Friends.
What'd you learn about it? Incidentally, we should say a divorce took place during that time.
Yeah, within a couple years.
Not unrelated, you think?
I don't think so. I think there's always stresses in a marriage, and this is just an
Some people do not get past this.
That's right.
So it can either strengthen the marriage, or it can work to make life more difficult. Is that so?
Yes, and I think more of the latter than I think the common myth is that it'll bring you together, and I think that's a myth.
What did you do then? Did you learn to grieve with Compassionate Friends?
What grief was about? They got me to talk, because they gave me the support that I needed to talk about. It took me about a year to talk about the guilt I felt, but then they waited.
Bill, as you know, in our audience are a number of people who feel a brotherhood, sisterhood with you. They have likewise sustained the loss of a child, and I assume that, are there any males here that, yeah, sorry, you can talk if you're a woman, honest. Yes, ma'am. You wanted to say.
I'm with Manhattan chapter of Compassionate Friends, and I just have to say one very important thing, that people do not speak about our child when they're dead.
And that bothers you.
We want our children's names to be brought up. It is vital that they are recognized, that they existed for as long as they were here.
The tendency is to hide all the evidence of this sadness, and that's not what you want.
We need that child to be recognized. And
just a little bit about...
My only child, my son Josh, died 5 years ago in a car accident. And my husband and I broke up within months after that, which was very common. It's textbook case.
Yes, it is.
And I shortly married after that, a year after that. And it's been very hard, because the baggage that I took with me, my Josh is with me. He will always be with me. And my husband did not expect him to be with me. You know, he figured that his physical presence wasn't here, so I can just go on and be okay. My son will be with me for the rest of my life.
There was a kind of an impatience, you dragging this memory, is that it?
That's right.
So life goes on, put it in your past, and let's go, et cetera, didn't work for you.
Forget it. No way. He's my son till I die, and then some.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, let me see if we can't just get... Your son's memory is not honored by his mother collapsing and being depressed every day. Do you agree?
True. That's true. I'm going forward with my life. But I really feel that he's always there with me, and he always will be. And I want my friends, my family, to know that he was here. And they don't mention his name to me.
Yeah.
My mother is the only one that speaks to me about my son. Nobody speaks to me about him anymore.
Right. Now, if we were old buddies and we met somewhere under a social circumstance, I would be hesitant, I have to be honest with you, and you would be too on the other side of this fence. I think you understand that. In the middle of a cocktail party, your point is that mention it, and if you cry, so what? Isn't that? Or if I cry, is that the point?
That's right. That's right. So what? And we don't need any comments. We just want to know that they're there for us.
Yeah.
That's so important. Be there for us. Hold us. Say you're okay.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
We
We don't need someone telling us about our child's death, that we remember. But I think what Jane was saying is that we want their existence,
Yeah, that they
to
were,
talk
they
about the
were.
happy times, the times that we were together, that they don't have to talk about the death.
Sir.
Yes, I like to make 2 points. The first one is that I don't believe that most marriages are being broken by the death of a child. You come into a marriage with a past history, and if your marriage is floundering, yes, if you lose your child, that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
But who? You know, what relationship doesn't have its own vulnerabilities? Do you know what I mean? Let's agree that.
I want the people out there to understand that you don't break up a marriage by losing your child. In fact, more marriages are sustained after the loss of a child. The other point I wanted
I'm not sure everyone agrees, but it's America. You're allowed to disagree. Go ahead.
The other point I like to make is that I can see what Jane is saying. When you meet at family gatherings, right away the subject of your child who is dead is never mentioned, and that is what bothers most bereaved parents.
You lost a child?
My son, who was almost 20 years old, was killed on March 14, 1981. His anniversary is coming up next month. My wife is already reacting. She's been reacting the whole month of February.
Anticipating the anniversary, was it an auto accident?
Yes, it was a car accident.
That's when our kids are most vulnerable. You know that, I'm sure. Yeah, 16 to what? 24? Is there any parent who hasn't at night heard the sirens outside? Wondered if it's at my kid. You know.
There is no good way to die, whether it's a car accident or suicide or murder. I happen to have the hotline of Compassionate Friends of Long Island, and I hear all the different ways of dying every single day. And to tell you the truth, death is death, and we have to go on with the fact of being alive.
I agree with you, sir. Yes, ma'am. You'll stand. Get to you just a minute, house.
I'm from the Brooklyn chapter. My name is Regina Mawile. My son died from sickle cell disease February the 10th, 1985. I needed
How
compassion.
long before he died did you know about this?
17 years. So for 17 years, I had to suffer with him. A little bit every day, I died with him. I knew he would die, but I just didn't. You can't accept it.
No, you can't.
They can't prepare you for it. So I needed compassionate friends. I needed them to make me laugh again and not make my family shun me and my friends shun me, made me feel that I was being, you're guilty, you shouldn't do this, you did what you could, don't do this, don't
Are you sure
say
you weren't
that.
reading something in there? I mean, they didn't shun you. They might have just been a little
No,
bit.
they stayed away from me.
Well, but that's
No, they stayed
yeah.
away from me.
But my point is
Yes.
not because of anything. They're afraid of themselves, don't you think?
No, it's the things that they said. I mean, John's enough. I mean, Regina, you going to say anything else about him? They took all his pictures down. We don't need, you know, he did what he had to do. He lived the way he was supposed to live. He did all the things he could do, and that's it. I mean, shut up. We don't want to hear anymore. There's
It
where the
must make you
shut
nuts too when people say you
Yes.
demand to feel lousy. There's something wrong
I do
with
feel
you.
lousy.
Yeah.
I do feel lousy, but I have
Phil,
my compassionate friends.
I think that's the value of the Compassionate Friends, is that the organization understands that better than anybody else, and allows us to do that in a supporting atmosphere.
Meet Jane and Rick Howe. You've read about this. This has got to be, I just cannot imagine emotionally surviving this. She went into her 16-month-old's bedroom, and the baby was dead. Sudden infant death syndrome. October 22nd, 1985. So you're in the aftermath of this. You had taken the plane that morning to
Washington, D.C., and there was a phone call waiting for me to call the hospital.
Right.
And I called.
Right. You didn't go into your baby's room because you were glad the baby was sleeping. How many parents do that? 1,000,000 times over. Even you, Jane, you didn't go in as early as you might otherwise because the baby had, what, a cold or cough?
He had a slight upper respiratory infection, and I thought that he was sleeping, and I let the little guy sleep. And it got later and later, and I was rattling around back at that end of the house. I thought, well, I'll take a shower, and that'll wake him up, and that didn't wake him up. So I got dressed, and finally I just kind of tiptoed into his room, and he looked like he was asleep until I got close to him. And I knew he had passed away quite a while before I'd gone in there. And you think you're prepared. You have everywhere. And my first reaction was to dial the operator. And I was screaming at this poor woman. But luckily for me, I had excellent help. The various professionals who came to the house and then got us to the hospital and tried to resuscitate Steve, and then the people who stayed with me in the hospital while Rick was on his way back from Washington. One of my neighbors came over and stayed with me, and that was just the most horrible thing, the horrible day I can ever remember. And the initial feelings of guilt, and we didn't know, we had no idea at that point that it was SIDS. We wondered what we had done. Maybe I had over-medicated him. Maybe I should have taken him to the hospital.
Yeah.
What didn't I recognize?
Why didn't I
we
go
were
in the room? You must beat
we were
yourself to death.
waiting with bated breath for that first autopsy report that vindicated us.
And it didn't. The medical examiner came very close to saying that we should have taken him to the hospital.
Yeah. Now, I can't believe that people do this on purpose. Do you know?
Medical examiners don't have to deal with people who talk back.
Well,
Yeah, but what's in it for him, too? Yeah. But the point is, all the things that might provoke your guilt are the things that parents do every day of the year.
Yes.
Well, there's so much to cover here. First of all, this was your first and only child.
we-
Maybe that shouldn't, so what? If you had 15 others, this can't be any less painful.
We are typical of our generation. We waited to have a child, and we really wanted this child. And when I got pregnant, I did everything right, you know, the right diet, the right prenatal care, no alcohol, no caffeine, 2 aspirins during the entire pregnancy. He was born a healthy baby. He had a healthy medical record. I didn't expect this at all. And it's left an enormous, enormous gap in our life. We were ready for a family. Incidentally, it has brought us closer together. And we have I guess the initial days after this happened to us, did a lot of exploring, like, what is this? Why does it happen? Why is it the #1 killer of infants and nobody knows more about it? Because we got all kinds of misinformation from so-called professionals, including doctors that we spoke to. And the more we found out, the angrier we got that there wasn't more funding for research and that there was such a lack of awareness in the public. So we've been working for that.
You're
Yeah.
We're active. We decided that aggression is superior to depression.
My son Jason died in April. He was 15 years old. He walked into his first period class at Manhasset High School and dropped dead. We found out he had a condition called idiopathic hypertrophic subaortic stenosis. We started a foundation which has been sanctioned by the government as a nonprofit organization. We have met with doctors from all over the world. It's called the Jason F. Gruen Research Foundation. We met with doctors to find out if it was connected with SIDS, and we have found out it isn't. We've met with doctors from England, Japan, and all over. Very little is known other than that the teenagers, 10,000 a year, are dying from this disease, dropping dead on the football field or wherever. And my husband left 7 weeks after my son died. And I have no other children. And I found a wonderful man who lost a child also 5 years earlier, who has been able to help me through this.
Yeah. Was there anybody you could cry with?
No, I
Immediately upon.
I cried alone because my husband collapsed into pieces, and he was not the strong one. I was. I took care of the funeral.
That's not necessarily good, you know. I mean, that might mean you're pushing down a lot of stuff. I mean, that's how
I went for therapy right afterwards to a wonderful doctor who helped me through. I come from a very strong family, and I didn't have the same problem people do. I have wonderful friends and wonderful family who have enveloped me, and I've let them. Maybe that's some of the problem. We have to let them envelop us.
Dr. Fred Mandel joins us. You are a pediatrician, doctor, and you're vice chairman of the National Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Foundation. You're a Harvard person.
Thank you.
You wanted to say what, sir? Enlighten us here as best you can.
Well, I think it's important to know that what you're seeing here, Phil, is the normal grieving process. That grieving is we tend, when an adult dies, to be able to reminisce. In our society, when the child dies, there is not the opportunity to reminisce. There is still, unfortunately, a taboo about talking about babies who die.
Yeah.
When a child dies, the entire family structure is altered. When we're talking about what happens to siblings, what happens to fathers, fathers act different than mothers. Fathers tend to go out. They want to take new jobs. They don't want to talk about it.
Fathers are more likely to want a baby or less? Another baby?
Fathers are more likely to want a baby right away. Mothers seem to be a little reluctant sometimes because they don't sometimes want to take that chance again.
I would like to speak about the medical staff at a hospital. I am appalled now thinking about how we were treated after they told us that our son had died. It was totally unexpected. No, our son died of epiglottitis, and I felt when it happened that there was something wrong there. I mean, there was some sort of accident. But the doctor who told us was not even really involved with the case. She was defensive. She's telling me that my son has died, the unthinkable. I didn't expect it. I thought he had gone in for a sore throat. And she is defensive. They never even mentioned to us that we could see his body. We stumbled out of the hospital. The corridors were empty. The doctors never even came out to face us.
How old was your baby?
He was 3 years old. And he was healthy. He was strong. But they were so unprofessional. They were so defensive. We literally stumbled out of the hospital. Yeah. I'm thinking I'm leaving my son there. Yeah. And it was very unprofessional.
Yeah. Is it possible, this does not excuse this behavior. I'm trying to understand this. In this age of litigation, is it possible we have hospital personnel say, oh, we didn't do this, forgetting totally the enormous crush that you must feel?
It had nothing to do with legal implications. We were broken. We were on the floor. There was nothing for us. And there were no arms for us. Fortunately, we have lots of wonderful friends and family. But at that moment...
Phil, I wonder if I could comment on that.
I promise. You'll forgive me for just this. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, you want?
I'd just like to say that also my husband never even knew for a long time whether our son had really died because he never saw the body. He began to think that they had taken him or something.
Yeah. So what did you do about that? You did, though.
Yes. Well, I went a few days later to, to the morgue, basically, to see him. But I just wish that hospitals were more.
Mother of a SIDS child, which at 6 weeks died on Christmas Eve. I had a lot of support from all of my friends and from the SIDS group, and I just wanted to make the point that everyone grieves differently. I was told not to feel guilt because my son was perfect. I did everything I could to make sure that he lived, and I woke up one morning and he was dead. They kept telling me, don't feel guilty. I started feeling guilty because I didn't feel guilty of his death.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there are stories of you look for the day when you get through the day without thinking about it. And listen, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but there are people who are guilty because they didn't think about it.
Right. And
This
I just have
terrible.
to thank
I mean, you
everyone
can't
for
win.
being so supportive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
For couples is to respect each other's way of grieving. My husband could not have a picture of my son.
He couldn't
For the
handle it.
No, he couldn't handle it in the living room. They were in other rooms, but where he would come into the house and see. So for the longest time, in fact, it's only been a year now that I've had his picture up there, and my son's been dead 6 years in April. A suicide victim, and that's a guilt to handle too, because people
You're
do
saying
look
the
at
picture's now back in the living room?
back in the
And
living
your
room.
husband's handling it.
Yes, but I
You
waited
see
for
that
him.
as a victory. That's another level he's moved to?
That's right. That's correct.
Yes, sir.
My son died a year ago, December 28th of SIDS, and I think something that's really important is that a lot of times when the father is in control of all the arrangements and everything that has to be done, everybody does come and say, oh, well, how's the wife? And they'll never consider the husband at all. They'll say, well, how is your wife getting through it? And you really need to know that it's okay to ask the husband, how are you doing? And also that when you're having a good day and things are going okay, don't come over and expect you to be mourning as much as, because they're coming over for 15 minutes to your home and they're going to be mourning and they're going to go home, they're going to be okay. But if you're having a good day that day, it's okay to feel okay that day.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
My daughter died 4 years ago. She was 5 days old, lived 5 days in an intensive care unit. And people say, put it behind you, forget about it, close the book, go on.
Better 5 days than 5 years. I mean, that they're
Right.
You can always
right.
have another.
You can always have another one, which, here I am 4 years later, and I have not been able to have another one. It's not always true. But you don't have to close the book. People talk about closing the book and going on with life. Yes, you have to go on with life, but the child you lose is part of what made your life what it is.
Phil, I'm a multiply bereaved parent. I've had 2 miscarriages, a premature baby to live 15 days, and a baby to die the day before her first birthday.
Oh, my.
It is, in fact, true that a marriage will suffer. I have 2 surviving children who are, to this day, suffering. It's been 3 years since my latest loss, and my 11-year-old is dying inside. She's failing in school. I have received help, but she hasn't received help.
Yeah. May I have a brief comment from you, Doctor, regarding siblings? I know that you're researching.
Siblings are very difficult. Some siblings don't know that other siblings can die. Young siblings don't understand the permanence. We prepare children to be big brothers and big sisters, and suddenly that linkage in the family is shattered. It's ended very, very quickly.
Yes.
Their place in the family has changed abruptly.
I'd just like to say that I get no more comfort, and this is to the people out there, I get no more comfort than when someone looks into my eyes and says, "How you doing?"
Really?
And just...
and you know why they're asking you.
Oh, I know why they're asking me. And it makes you want to just drop and relax, and you can really feel like you can talk to that person. And I also, what you're seeing here today is the essence of compassionate friends. And that is sharing a common understanding.
Yeah. You have to really ache for the people who do this alone. You can't do this alone.
I can't imagine doing it alone.
Either.
You can't do something like this alone. You have to know that you're sharing it, that it is not an individual experience, that this has happened to other people. And
You
as
lost
a friend,
child.
I lost a 16-year-old daughter a year and a half ago.
Was it an accident?
No, she died in her sleep of myocarditis, which is a virus which affects the heart muscle.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment on the behalf of the siblings. I felt a lot of guilt for being a survivor, for not being the one that died.
You lost
my
your sister?
My sister died in her sleep at 16 in what they called crib death, an adolescent crib death. My father belongs to the Compassionate Friends in New Jersey, and not only did I feel guilt, but it got to the point where my father was spending a lot of money in memorial funds and this and that. That was his way of grieving. And I'm trying to get my way through college, and finally I said, "Dad, help. I'm drowning. I need your help. I need you to help me. I'm alive." And I know Irene would want you to see me and say, "Help Lisa get through school." And that didn't do anything to our relationship but make it stronger. And he looked at me and he said, "You're right." And it didn't stop his grieving process, and it didn't
What a great
hurt.
relationship, though, that you could
And
say
my
that.
father's right here now, too, and we shared this day together. But it was my way of saying, I'm alive, my older sister's alive, and we need you now. We
I've got
need
it.
you here.
Who's your dad?
This gentleman.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to address Lisa because she's done a fantastic job. She volunteers 4 hours a week counseling other teenagers as
But
part
that's
of
a
the
real
Friends of
honest
Health.
story.
Yeah.
She's telling us right. National SIDS Foundation, Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, is 8240 Professional Place, Landover, Maryland. The zip is 20785. There is an 800 number, 221-SIDS. I am pleased to share with you, did you help produce this spot?
Jane and I wrote the spot.
You
and
wrote
my
the
company produced it, donated.
Incidentally, is there a child in this spot?
There's a little baby in this spot.
And that was the first child that you held, is it not? Since your baby died?
Yeah.
How long, what was the distance between your holding this child and your baby's death?
2 months.
Yeah.
I
You didn't want to go near a child, I'm sure.
Not for a long time. Jane did. She took care of kids down at social services, but I couldn't touch a kid until this spot.
Here's the spot.
7,000 babies will die quietly in their sleep this year for no apparent reason, victims of sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. Medical researchers all over the country are struggling to find the reasons for this leading killer of children between the ages of 1 week and 1 year. But with drastic cutbacks of federal funds, this research is moving slowly, and our babies are dying every day. We need your help to speed up the research to save our babies. Please send your tax-deductible contribution to the National SIDS Foundation, 8240 Professional Place, Landover, Maryland, 20785, or call 1-800-221-SIDS, because every baby deserves to see the morning light. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning, my sweetheart. Good morning to you.